To respond to the comment from, I think, C123, will this presentation be recorded? Yes, the presentation will be recorded. I've actually just started that. You should see a little disclaimer at the top that lets you know that it is being recorded. So, thank you. And yeah. Related to Bobby's comments in the chat, will the slides be made available post-meeting? Yes. What we can do is we can either respond to the, do a reply to the meeting notice that I had sent out, but we will also be posting it on the website related to the code amendments for medical and adult use marijuana. So we will be making those available to the public and to you as well. So excellent. So I think looks like we got a good amount of people here. So thank you so much for coming and joining us. We really appreciate it, taking the time to do so and to talk a little bit about really medical and adult use marijuana and kind of the response to the recent voter initiative that was passed in November. So with that, I think I'll get started here. Hold on a second. There we go. So agenda for today, I'm going to go through, do background on medical marijuana regulations in the city, pretty much. Talk a little bit about where those have come, how they changed over time, related to the city and the city's zoning regulations. Talk a bit about Arizona Smart and Safe Act that did pass back in November, and kind of what that really means for the community and for us and what we're doing. Go through a little bit on current regulations. Those are medical marijuana regulations, but talk a little bit about where those, what we have on the books currently. Go through, do a comparison of Tucson to other communities, and then talk a little bit about potential changes to zoning code and some next steps. So before we kind of jump into the background and everything, I just want to say I'm Daniel Bursick. I am a principal planner in code development for the city of Tucson. There are several other people here from the city of Tucson as well. And let's see if I can take a look on the list here. So we have Elisa Hamlin, who is a principal planner from Planning and Development Services. Corin Manning, who is the planning administrator for Planning and Development Services. Samuel Roberts, who is a lead planner or a planner with the city of Tucson Planning and Development Services, and then Sarah Megason as well as a lead planner. So with that, as you notice on this slide towards the bottom, we have this little link, submit comments using this form linked in the chat. So one thing that we will be doing is if you either don't feel like asking a question or you want to kind of leave comments for us related to this, we will be providing a form. I put a couple links in the chat. I'll put it in one more time. Feel free to click on that link. There's room for you to put your name and everything else. It's not required, but feel free to leave comments related to this, related to that. Oh, Corin just mentioned we also have ward staff in the meeting as well. Let me see if I can take a look here. I believe we have Ariel Fry and Diana Amato from Ward 6. We have Martha Cantrell from Ward 4. It looks like Nicholas Ross and Piri Glinsky have also joined us. Nicholas is a lead planner with Planning and Development Services. Piri is with the city attorney's office. And then we have Natalia from the mayor's office as well. So thank you, Corin. I appreciate you pointing that out. So yeah, so feel free to submit comments using the form that's linked in the chat. Additionally, just because it's a large group, if you do have a question, feel free to type it into the chat box and we'll go through those and answer those. If you have a comment or a question, there's a raise hand feature. You can raise your hand, and we will, kind of discuss that. I think it might be easier to wait towards the end to have that discussion, but yeah, feel free to use those features to comment. So with that, I think we'll get started here. Background of marijuana regulations in Tucson. So this, since the original Proposition 203 was passed, legalizing medical marijuana, we've kind of gone through several iterations. We initially had drafted something that was, I think it was based off of what Arizona League of Cities had drafted for their model ordinance, but responsive to some of the community issues. We didn't really have an understanding of what the impact would be, so there have been changes over time. So we went back and adopted some additional regulations for the zoning back in 2014. One of the things that came along in 2014 was that we had it kind of went through with a plan to allow for offsite cultivation, but to kind of separate the two things to where dispensaries would be allowed for a smaller size, but in commercial zones for the retail and retail sales of the medical marijuana, and then allowing for an industrial I1 and I2 zones where it was felt it was more appropriate, more space to do offsite cultivation. So at that point, that's when we removed the size limit for the industrial, the I1 and the I2 zones for offsite cultivation. In February 2016, Mayor and Council adopted some more additional revisions, placed a cap on the number of dispensaries that are allowed. We increased the permitting size for those offsite cultivation locations in the C2 and C3 zone. So you can do offsite cultivation, just not large facilities, from 3,000 to 4,000 square feet. I believe we also addressed dispensaries at that time and increased them to 4,000 square feet. And then adjusted a setback related to kind of expansion of existing dispensaries. And then last time we went through and back in really 2018, eventually adopted in January 8th, 2019, we went through and addressed the sunset date related to the medical marijuana ordinance. And then we approved, the mayor and council approved a couple amendments related to odor mitigation. So adding in odor mitigation to the actual code. Previously, we had been addressing it through a zoning condition that we would add upon site approval. And then adjusting the lobby size, so allowing for a little bit more flexibility related to the lobby size. So that's kind of where we've gotten to right now as far as our existing regulations. One of the major reasons, there's really two reasons why we've kind of come to address this right now. One of the major ones is just related to COVID and the need for social distancing. So we've been kind of working on some temporary measures to allow for additional social distancing, especially for immunocompromised patients. But also back in February, Arizona Proposition 207, the Arizona Smart and Safe Act was passed by voters. Just kind of an overview, it was passed statewide by a 60 to 39 or 60 to 40% margin. So like over 600,000 votes more for voted yes. It was actually even higher in Pima County and Tucson, more towards, I think, 63, 64% in favor of it. And then some of the kind of items related to that, with that passing and kind of things that that it does address. It allowed for limited marijuana possession, use, and cultivation for adults 21 and older. It does allow for possession of plants and cultivation on site for personal use. So 6 marijuana plants for a single person household, 12 marijuana plants for a household of 2 or more. So that it does allow for that. They went through and basically the way it's crafted is most of the new licenses for the adult use will be given to existing medical marijuana dispensaries, or at least they have a preference for them. I'm assuming, and from conversations that I've had with people in the industry, is that most, if not all, will be taking them up on that and applying for those new licenses. And unless they are in, some sort of not in compliance currently with the existing rules related to medical marijuana, they should be ones to get those licenses. There will be an additional 26 licenses distributed, and those are really preferences for underserved areas and applicants from communities disproportionately impacted by enforcement of previous marijuana laws. So ultimately, I don't think they haven't set up the rules related to who would get those kind of social equity licenses, but that will be that's where those additional 26 licenses. I think you're going to see a limited amount of new licenses in Tucson, just because of the fact that we're not an underserved area. Those are generally, they go to counties that have 1 or 2 dispensaries currently. And there we may see some of the social equity licenses being awarded here. Arizona Department of Health Services is currently setting up additional regulations and laws related to this. They have a couple drafts so far of that. I think they just put out one about a week ago or so. Those can be located on their website if you're interested in taking a look at them. Most of it doesn't have to do with really zoning regulations. They leave a lot of that up to the local municipalities to do. It's more kind of rules and how how they're supposed to be operated, essentially. But one thing that the Smart and Safe Act did in their Prop 207 is that one of the rules is that new municipal adult use regulations shall not be more restrictive than current medical marijuana regulations. So I think that's something to keep in mind as we talk about potential changes for this, is that we really have, the medical marijuana regulations are really the starting point, but we can't make these new regulations any more restrictive than the ones we currently have on the books for medical marijuana. Steps taken to date, we've, like I said, we've been talking a little bit about the COVID-related issues that are leading into this kind of discussion about the adult use. So back in September, we held a study session with mayor and council. They provided some initial guidance on some of those temporary measures to address COVID-related issues. And then they also told us to go and talk to, the stakeholders and the dispensary owners to see what their issues are. And work with them to figure out how we can make a safer situation for their patients. So we did hold a first stakeholder meeting with them, discussion, feedback related to temporary measures. We came up with some temporary measures that could potentially work. Came back to our mayor and council on November 17th. And they gave us a little bit of additional guidance as far as what we can do for those temporary measures, and then said, get started on the adult use as well. So we went back and talked to, the stakeholders and the dispensary owners, let them know kind of what had happened at our mayor and council meeting, what they were allowed to do for temporary measures, and talked to them a bit in December about really what they see as being some of their challenges with our current regulations as adult use does come online related to this. So just to kind of let you know what some of those temporary measures were. So we currently, are allowed to do some temporary measures in our code, and those are things that do help with the social distancing and help with those immunocompromised patients. Those are things like curbside pickup and delivery, home delivery, which our code currently allows for as long as it meets, state code or state laws. And then expanded lobby size. So we don't have a limit on the amount of size for a lobby. So that was something that there was concern about, but we went back and kind of let them know related to that. And then, the following kind of temporary measures that we kind of went through, and this was through just holding off on enforcement for the time being. So they're temporary measures that would allow for that. There were dispensaries that had additional space. So right now, dispensaries are limited to 4,000 square feet in dispensary size. So, but they had unutilized space next door that wasn't a part of that 4,000 square feet. So one thing that we, that through mayor and council's direction, allow for the temporary utilization of unused space for expanded lobby. So allow for people to spread out more while they're waiting to get their medicine. And then temporary utilization of existing drive-throughs. This was one thing that had come up one, it was brought up by mayor and council, but also I think there was one or two facilities that had, I don't know if they were in a former like bank or a former fast food place, but they did have the physical drive-through there. They just couldn't utilize it because of our code. So this would allow for them to utilize that existing drive-through on a temporary basis as we move forward. So those were some of the measures that we looked at. I mean, space is an issue related to COVID and social distancing. Those are more permanent structural changes to buildings and things of that sort. And it's one of the things that we, we'll be looking at for this. But it was one of the things that legally our city attorney had advised us that that would be a little too much as far as a temporary measure and change. Related to those mayor and council meetings, they did provide us some direction on how to move forward. So back in September, they did say, begin the process of reviewing the UDC, engage stakeholders in the event that adult choice marijuana ballot measure is approved. That was obviously prior to the November election. So we started kind of gathering information and doing research and kind of getting an understanding of what other communities are doing or have done. And we talked to some stakeholders back when we were also doing the COVID stuff. And then we came back to them in November 17th. We did hear some things from them. So, and related to the UDC changes, they directed us to look into expanding the total allowed dispensary size due to additional concerns with social distancing, COVID-19, but also increased traffic due to Proposition 207. So with Proposition 207, you have the potential for a larger customer base, more and more people. How do we address that issue with a dispensary maximum that's 4,000 square feet that is limiting? So that was one thing. There was semi-specific guidance related to, staff should review what is happening. I think they specifically said Phoenix, what Phoenix is doing, or other communities in the Phoenix area, and use that kind of as a guide as we move forward. And then there were comments, about the fact that Flagstaff has unlimited. Some places like Chandler have 2,000 square feet limits. Maybe we try to find something that's kind of in the middle of there that would work for our community. So that was the guidance. It was mainly based on dispensary size. There was interest in drive-throughs and looking into allowing for drive-throughs for dispensaries. So that's something that we will talk about today as well. To give you a little bit of context kind of related to really medical marijuana, and I will say these are existing regulations. All of these communities, I'm assuming at least most of them will likely go through and revise their regulations based on Proposition 207. But this will give you an understanding of kind of what we're looking at existing medical marijuana dispensary regulations. So as you can see, Tucson's at the very bottom there. We allow it in our C2 and C3 zones, which are more intense commercial zones. We allow for a 4,000 square foot dispensary size, which if you look at this page and the next page is kind of in the middle as it is. There are places that are more restrictive like Mesa and Oro Valley or Chandler. But then there are places like Flagstaff and Scottsdale, Peoria, Surprise, all of those places that do not have a size limit at all for the dispensary sizes. So currently we're kind of in the middle there. We did go and look at Phoenix, and that's here. And Phoenix has recently actually made changes. They originally had 2,000 square feet back in July. And I think a lot of it was related to COVID. But also looking and seeing that adult use was coming up, they increased their size limit from 2,000 to 5,000. But really, where we're at right now, we're kind of in the middle here. The separation distances are, I think, initially they all started off pretty similar, but they were adjusted over time based on really the community and development patterns. So you'll see for our for our separation distances. for our separation distances, a lot of them are related to sensitive uses, but we don't have a residential zoning district setback like a lot of other places do, just because of our development patterns and how close all of our residential is to commercials and things of that sort. So if you look at our commercial corridors, thin strip of commercial usually, and then residential right behind it. And it would basically keep it so it was severely restricted, if not completely restricted. Mo, I see that you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify something when I saw this. I was actually in Tempe at a facility that was about 30,000 square feet. And what they're doing is that 5,000 square feet is limited to sales. Storage is not included. Restrooms are not included. Waiting areas are not included. So I just want to clarify that, with the reality of what's actually going on. The city of Tucson says everything's in the 4,000 square feet. And just so you know, most other cities are saying that's a sales floor area and not limiting it to just that. So I was literally there the other week, and you can verify it yourself if you want to.
Okay, thanks, Mo. Appreciate it. Okay, so with that, that's kind of where we're at related to comparison to other regulations. What other cities are doing and related to adult use, and I know Tempe as well is looking at things. So we have several communities that have passed ordinance to restrict adult use, either prohibiting it, adult use dispensaries, or restricting it just to dual use facilities. So Gilbert prohibited adult use dispensaries. Oro Valley, Mesa, Chandler, Scottsdale, and Sahuarita have all limited dispensaries to dual use. There may have been a couple other more recently. I'm not entirely sure. But that's what we've seen there. Phoenix did go through. They expanded their dispensary size, as I was saying before, from 2,000 to 5,000 square feet. And then others are, currently reviewing their code. I know Tempe recently had put out a survey for the community to go through and kind of give their feedback on dispensary size, on some of their setbacks, things of that sort. And then they were going to craft up an ordinance and bring it to their planning commission, I think in the next month or so, which would eventually make its way to their mayor and council. So you're seeing other communities do this. What I've seen as far as my discussions with other communities is that usually they start with their medical marijuana regulations, and then they'll make adjustments to that as they move forward. One second, I think I. Okay. All right, so some of the items that I think that we think may need changes related to this are, one, we'll have to go through and make some changes to our definitions. Our definitions reference just medical marijuana, not necessarily some of the new way things are named and whatnot in the Prop 207. Look at manufacturing and standalone manufacturing. This is a brand new use that's coming up that's been introduced with this. So talking a little bit about that. Dispensary size, as Mo was talking about, and really has been the focus of our mayor and council, and as far as what they are looking for us to make changes on, things such as drive-throughs, and then potentially looking at odor mitigation changes, which we did last time, going back and taking a review of that and seeing whether or not we need to make any changes related to that. So just related to kind of dispensaries here. In our current regulations, again, we reference medical marijuana dispensaries and medical marijuana dispensary offsite cultivation locations. So one thing that we would have to go through and make changes to as we go through is actually making regulations that would include both the medical marijuana dispensary and the new adult use dispensaries. And then looking at references, I will say that the I think it's in Prop 207, their definition of the adult use dispensary actually references the section for the medical marijuana dispensary. So it's really the same thing. It's just a matter of making sure that we're referencing the correct section related to that. The offsite cultivation location is a little different, just because as it is now, we allow for manufacturing as a part of the offsite cultivation location land use. So, so we allow for, you know, all the manufacturing and things of that sort to go on within the offsite cultivation land use. You could potentially have a standalone, a standalone manufacturing facility within that. So there were some changes in this last bill, that the last Prop 07 would likely have to make some changes just to the language, and potentially separate those out, which I'll talk a little bit about on the next slide. But really just making sure that our definitions match up with what's actually out there. So manufacturing, standalone manufacturing, this is something that's come up, and it was a concern, just the fact that we may or may not be properly addressing it with our code. As is, it's allowed within the offsite cultivation land use, but it's something that we're thinking we may want to clarify. It's called out directly as its own type of facility. So in the new regulations, there are dispensaries, there's offsite cultivation, and then there's also standalone manufacturing. So they would have the same standards, but it would just allow for people to really for us to be clear that manufacturing is allowed, it's its own thing, et cetera, et cetera. So we're looking at potentially making those changes just to clarify things. I don't think it changes any of the regulations, but again, it's to make sure that when you read our code, you get an understanding that this is what is allowed and that type of thing. So we are looking at that. One other thing that could potentially come out of this is just you know, looking at possibly allowing for additional amount of space only for manufacturing in the dispensary. As it is right now, it's an accessory use. It still counts towards the 4,000 square feet. I think part of the reason why we did that when we were crafting our regulations was the fact that, you know, this it was just the idea that the appropriate location for cultivation and manufacturing are in industrial zones, and in those facilities where there aren't size limits, and not necessarily in commercial zones. It's something, you know, there's some safety issues sometimes related to having manufacturing in commercial zones. And that's the reason why that was crafted that way. But it doesn't mean that it's something we can't necessarily address, or at least allow for maybe some additional size or space for manufacturing. I see that David Schmutz has his hand up. Yeah, David, would you like to give a comment? David, I think you're muted here. I can unmute you there.
Now can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
With this, are you saying that you want to separate the manufacturing sites from the dispensaries?
So as it is right now, they allow for manufacturing as an accessory use and not its own as an accessory use to a dispensary. So we do allow for some manufacturing to occur within them, but we've had discussions with some of the dispensary owners who are doing manufacturing at their dispensary site, and just isn't enough space for them to do so. So it's basically a discussion on whether or not we would potentially allow for some additional space, especially with, you know, the expansion and adult use coming around, to do some of that manufacturing at the dispensary. As it is right now, manufacturing is allowed within the offsite cultivation facility definition. Michael Crawford?
Yeah. So the standalone. So I mean, at this point, are these going to be recommendations to the Planning Commission that we're discussing?
Yeah. So these are. I mean, so basically, what we're looking at here. These are things that we are looking at potential changes. We want to get your feedback on those. So feel free to fill out a comment card or just comment on it, and then we'll take that feedback and then craft those. Yeah.
I mean, because on the standalone manufacturing or distribution license, because each medical establishment, or I'm sorry, marijuana establishment is going to be entitled to a distribution manufacturing standalone facility. I mean, I don't think those should be classified in the I1, I2 zone per se. I mean, there's a lot of good space around that's C2, C3 that would be ideal for light manufacturing and distribution. So I guess that's what I would recommend, that we more focus that type of standalone facility. You know, it could be allowed in I1, I2, but necessarily restricted to I1, I2.
Okay, thank you, Michael. That's a good comment. I think Dimitri had raised his hand next.
Yeah, Dan, this is Dimitri. I was in the council office when in 2010 when we were pulling out of thin air the ordinances. I was also the one who initiated the September 9th changes with the council. Very familiar with this stuff. We had to go back and change the mistakes we made in 2014. I've spoken with a couple council members on this, and they're very clear on understanding that it's in the best interest of the city of Tucson to make the manufacturing sites as least restrictive as possible. Exactly what Michael was saying right now. C2, C3s, the very least possible restrictive classification. So more of those can come to Tucson and create more jobs. Right now, you have people hunting for properties across Phoenix. Other people might be pushing their own agenda to make properties more valuable. But the least restrictive restrictions you can make on the manufacturing sites specifically means more economic opportunity for Tucson. And all the council members are aware of that.
Okay, thank you, Dimitri. Appreciate it. Mo, would you like to speak?
Yeah, Dan, a couple of things here. It looks like, the dispensary size is not being addressed in terms of the space. I think it's also super important, like Dimitri said, to remember that mayor and council did talk about expanding the space for dispensaries. Honestly, on a $1 per square foot basis, the city of Tucson is going to limit its job activity by continuing to be at this space. So again, to not address that right now, while applications are due on January 19th, that's when DHS is going to start accepting them. So, you really have about days here to figure it out, or we'll simply have a form for you guys to sign saying we haven't adopted regulations for marijuana facilities. The other thing is with manufacturing, I think, like he said, like Michael and Dimitri said, keep it in C2, C3, and I1 and I2. But do you guys know that there's another cultivation? We don't get just one cultivation, we get two. So there's going to be a medical marijuana offsite cultivation use, as well as an adult use offsite cultivation. So every dispensary will not have one, but two offsite cultivations. So you don't want to change your medical marijuana ordinance. In fact, you probably just want to copy and paste it and add another one, because the Department of Health Services had a meeting last week with us principal officers and board members and informed us of that fact. So you're really going to have one retail dispensary / adult use facility for direct sales to consumers, one offsite manufacturing that should be unlimited, and then two cultivations per license that will be unlimited also, is what makes sense here if you want economic activity in Tucson.
So Mo, first off, we do have a slide where we talk about dispensary size and expansion of dispensary size, and that's coming up. Second, I will say that there's no limitations in our code currently on the number of offsite cultivation facilities. It's related to what's allowed by Arizona Department of Health Services. So, that's I get where you're coming from on that, but that's something that at least historically we haven't limited. It's been based on the one per license that was set out by the Arizona Department of Health Services.
Sure, yeah. So now but the thing is, I think in the ordinance, it actually ties it to the statute. So now you'll have one definition for medical that stays with your old Prop 203 statutes, and you'll have another one with your Prop 207 definition, so you're not confusing the issue. That's all I'm saying. I think the spirit of it is correct, like you're saying. It's just more of an administrative change to say one offsite, under this statute, and the other one under adult use. And that was personally a surprise to me too. I thought we only get one cultivation too, but I found out last week that we don't.
Okay, thank you. David, did you still have a question, or you just have your hand up still?
I think I still have my hand up.
Okay, no worries.
I don't really know how to use this app yet.
Here, I think I can actually lower your hand for you. There you go.
Hey,
Okay.
Daniel, it's Michael again. Hey, I saw early on you said that there was a cap on the number of dispensaries. What's the cap? That's the first I've heard of that.
There was created a cap back in like 14. I believe we have removed that, so we don't have that cap anymore.
Okay.
Okay, cool. All right. Go to the next one for the dispensary size. And again, our primary goal here is to kind of get feedback from you. This is based on the conversation that we had with mayor and council at our study session, but definitely want to get your feedback on this. So current regulations really are, it's 4,000 square feet total floor area, 500 square feet for total secure storage area. That's in our code, and that's something that I would like. We do want to get a little feedback on whether or not that's too limiting. It seems to me like it could be. And then we have the waiting area must be a minimum of 25% of the total sales floor area. So the reason why the change is coming about, one, it's COVID stuff related to that and social distancing and things of that sort. But also with the passage of Proposition 207 and legalization of adult use marijuana, 4,000 square feet really is likely to create spacing issues. I mean, we're already seeing spacing issues right now with the fact that there's been, since COVID, there's been really increased sales with medical patients and medical marijuana, and they'll likely be even more so as we move forward. So, looking at this and, the guidance from mayor and council where they're, they basically said Flagstaff's over here, Chandler's over here. Let's find something in the middle. And related to that and looking at other communities, I think the easiest place to start is really to look at doubling the size from 4,000 to 8,000 square feet. We had looked at this. In another way where we were thinking maybe you get a certain amount for adult use, a certain amount for medical use, and then if you do dual use, you can do a combination of those two. It started getting too complex. We were like, well, we don't want to really needlessly create more complexity within our code, which is already pretty complex. And we've talked about, again, some of these numbers are pretty arbitrary. So we do want to get your feedback on this and what you feel is appropriate for the community. I know previously, and I talked about this, and I know there is some disagreement from definitely Dimitri and Mo on this, but just the fact that traditionally we did have the manufacturing. The goal was to put the really large amounts of manufacturing in the industrial areas, and maybe that does change, but that's kind of why we've always had what we've had. But anyways, that's where we're looking right now, as far as just the straight up kind of doubling of it as we move forward. I've read reports from several people in the industry talk about that this could lead to a doubling of use. There are concerns about the fact that you don't want a lot of just lines outside waiting to get in. If you don't have enough room, you're going to end up with issues related to that. You also do need more storage for more product because you have more people coming in and things of that sort. So we definitely see the need for the expansion of this, but it's something to where we are looking for your feedback on this. So hold on one second. I think we have a hand up, if I can find it. Yes, Amy.
Hi, so I'm really pleased to hear the possible increase from 4,000 to 8,000 square feet. I'm currently the general manager of a dispensary, and we are definitely struggling. I think that square footage really needs to not include restrooms, not include waiting areas. And I think we need to really take a look at our secure storage area and increase that from a 500 square foot perspective. We will definitely be seeing double, if not triple, the amount of patients that we see medicinally in a day on the recreation side. We're currently very limited on the amount of product that we can take in and backstock installed and hold at the store for sale. So that would be another thing for us to consider. We would need to at least triple or remove that cap With us having recreation, we're not sure the ideal amount of people that we're going to see daily, but medicinally, we're seeing up to 400 people a day. So, that's something that definitely, needs to be incorporated. Not having the waiting rooms being a part of that 8,000 square feet, not including the restrooms, not including any kind of limitations on secure storage area for both medicinal and for the dual licensing.
Okay, great. Thank you, Amy. We appreciate it.
No problem.
We did get a comment from, actually, I just taken a look at some of these comments. So I did get a comment from Alex Sternum. I feel the waiting area and storage area limits are arbitrary. Inventory can vary tremendously by size and space needed. Excellent. Thank you, Alex. And then Dimitri said government limitations on size and or the free market should be looked at with the burden of proof placed on those who want them. Thank you, Dimitri. So that's kind of where we're at with that. Again, with all of this stuff, feel free to comment in the chat box. Feel free to draft out a comment on our form that I paste the link to in the chat related to it. But that's where we're going so far with dispensary size. Mo, yes.
Just one last thing. I think that the way this is playing out is dispensaries and dual licensees will also be able to sell plants, little cuttings, if you will, to the people who are 21 and over and want to do home grow. So that's going to need more biological live inventory too, if you want to do that. So seeds and plants, apparently the way this is written, and again, DHS is still figuring out these rules. This is a new inventory item for all of us, but stocking live plants and selling them miniature versions in a temperature controlled environment, that'll need its own type of space. So we are still watching how these things play out. But if we are going to be carrying plants, in addition to all our, CPG and finished flower goods, it's just going to be even more space to think about.
Okay, that's a good comment. Thanks, Mo. Okay, so related to drive-throughs, so this is something that did come up from our mayor and council. We went and looked at our regulations and other regulations. Drive-throughs are prohibited for medical marijuana facilities currently. I haven't been able, I think they may have allowed it for it temporarily in some of the other communities up in the valley. However, from all the regulations that I've seen, they are prohibited. I will say though, I think one of the things that when we were having our internal discussions on this, why are we being more restrictive for dispensaries than other land uses on this? And again, looking for comments and feedback on this, but we normally allow for drive-throughs in C2 and C3 zones, which is where our dispensaries are. It would allow for, potentially medical patients who may not want to be exposed to other people to pick up their medicine without having to go into a crowded lobby or waiting room related to that. So it is something that we're looking at, potentially allowing for drive-throughs. It's the only thing in our code that specifically calls out not allowing the drive-throughs for the land use, even though it is normally allowed in the C2 and C3 zones. So it is something we are looking at potentially allowing for drive-throughs for these facilities. Mo, do you still have your hand up? Or are you?
No, I'm just taking it down now.
Okay, cool. Thanks. So that's that. We're going to be looking at that and presenting that to the Planning Commission. And then the final one really is odor mitigation. And this one's been a struggle for us. Currently, when we went through and made our changes back in, I guess it was 2019, where we removed the sunset date, and then we went through and made some odor mitigation. We added in basically these regulations on the left-hand side of your screen related to odor mitigation. Because of the nature of odor mitigation, because it really is, it's facility specific, it's site specific. We wanted to allow for something that was flexible enough so they can actually properly address things. But we didn't want to be, so we couldn't really be super specific. We've done a bit of kind of research into other communities as well related to this. I think there are some in other states that have really expanded their odor mitigation regulations. Some that don't have many at all related to this. So one thing that we have noticed is that we haven't had any formal. We only have had one formal complaint filed with the city, but we have had some issues related to some of the cultivation facilities in the city related to odor mitigation. And one of the things that we do acknowledge is the fact that just, if it isn't working properly, there's not much of a recourse related to enforcing it, and it's a very difficult situation for us. So some of the things that we have been looking at, we've looked at a couple other communities that have kind of since they've, in California since legalization, in Colorado with legalization, some of them have made changes to their regulations to try to allow for at least that conversation and allow for that issue to be addressed. So one of the things that we have noticed that some places have done, they've added specificity into what needs to be included in an odor mitigation plan. So this is basically saying that you need to have operational procedures put in place. You could have kind of how you actually craft that. It's like a 4 or 5 part plan or whatever, instead of just saying you need odor mitigation. So that's a potential. And then some other places have actually gone through and dealt with procedures on how to deal with complaints. And I will say that from what I've witnessed with our cultivation facilities that have had complaints that have come out, they've been really receptive to working with the neighbors as far as taking those complaints and trying to address them. Sometimes it's difficult to do. But really, looking into adding procedures on how to deal with complaints. So, potentially inspection for adherence to plan and effectiveness when we do get a formal complaint into our code enforcement. And then some places have gone as far as really, putting in a certain time that the operator has to address deficiencies. Part of our issue here is that we don't have the actual equipment and expertise to necessarily to even really go out and inspect for this stuff. So you have a lot of times inspectors going out and just smelling at the property line and seeing whether or not it actually smells at certain times of day. Sometimes these things fluctuate, right? So during harvest time, you'll probably have when you're touching the plants, you end up with more of an odor than you do most other times when you're not doing that. So it's a very difficult situation. I think we might be able to look into adding some specificity and making some small changes that could potentially make it more effective as far as that type of thing. Al, looks like you have your hand up. Oh, Al, I think you're muted if you did want to speak. One second, let me see if I can try to. Yeah, so we did get a couple comments here. Let me kind of run through the comments, and then David we'll call on you here in a second. So Alex Sternum says, because curbside pickup is not allowed for adult use, I'm very concerned by any space limitations. The medical market is already underserved because of this. Now we're expecting 3 times the traffic in and out of dispensaries, and it will not allow for curbside pickup option. Question: it would still allow for the curbside pickup option. So I think that's something that will be addressed related to that. And then Amy says there's not a question of if we will see more people with adult usage in place. The question is how. With curbside and delivery not being an option for adult use, square footage is vital. So I don't think we're looking to change the curbside and delivery. But actually, is that that's part of Prop 207. So that's what that is. Okay, now I got it. Strongly considering moving ancillary square footage such as restrooms, storage rooms, waiting areas, operational use with 207. Then Linda clarifies that adult use does not allow curbside or delivery until 2023. Okay, and then David, I see you have your hand up.
Okay, now I'm unmuted.
There you go.
We have a cultivation site near our home, and over the past year, multiple times, we got the odor at our home, which is very offensive. And I've voiced my concerns, like I think you know, because I've sent lots of emails about it. And I did file 3 formal complaints, one to the facility, one to ADEQ, and one to the city, and I never heard back from any of them. So as far as addressing complaints, I don't think that's happening. As far as the zoning, I've made my concerns known about that they need to change the zoning so these things don't end up next to neighborhoods. Specifically about the one near my home, the odor mitigation plan is not working. The one that they have, and I was told last year that they are not going to be required to abide by the new odor mitigation plans, and I think that's unfair, particularly with Proposition 207, because if they start manufacturing for recreational use, then they're out of the scope of their previous plan, which was for medical use. And in the plan itself, they said that if they do any outdoor growing, they're going to have to submit a new plan. So any plan that they submit needs to conform to the new rules.
Okay, thank you for your comment on that, David. I appreciate it. I believe the issue with that and whether or not they had to adhere to the new odor mitigation was the fact that their plans had already been approved for their development package. We can take a look into
right.
Yeah, those comments.
Any expansion though needs to abide by whatever new rules you guys make.
So there are very specific things in our Unified Development Code on what constitutes an expansion and whether or not that would trigger the adherence to the new code. So yeah, we can take a look into that and see what their actual changes are to their plans and whether that falls within it.
Well, I hope when you develop the odor mitigation plans that you invite the public and don't just do it as a closed meeting that the public's not invited to, like what I think happened last time.
So it's anyway, okay. So part of the issue that we've had with odor mitigation is just the fact that they really do need to be site specific. So us putting detailed specificity into our code just doesn't work and wouldn't make for even a successful plan, essentially. So I think that's been kind of part of the issue related to that. And the code. Excuse me, I'm sorry, David.
I thought the new rule says that the odor has to stay within the property.
I don't believe it does, actually. But that, again, those are, I think it talks about, it says odor mitigation devices and techniques shall be incorporated in all medical marijuana facilities to ensure odors are mitigated. So it does have to mitigate odor. Again, this doesn't apply to the one that's near your facility because this was drafted and approved after that facility was approved. And then it talks about best practices and ways that it would do so related to that. So Al has a comment related to this that says your inspectors regarding odor mitigation should come out when the wind is blowing towards the other homes and are not. Okay, and then Sabrina says dispensaries are already seeing lines outside the buildings with medical use only. Additional square footage is vital to safely accommodate massive influx of people they're seeing. As well, it'll be impossible to maintain appropriate amount of product for this increase with the current limitations on secure storage. Thank you, Sabrina. Thank you, Al. Okay. David, do you still have your hand up?
I just tried to take it down.
Okay, no worries. Here, I'll lower it for you.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, cool. Excellent. So that's something we are looking at, just related to the odor mitigation for that. So those are the items that we are looking at within our code, making changes. I do appreciate some of the feedback on the curbside pickup and deliveries items. I had read that in Prop 207 and related to that. So that is a good point. So kind of with that, that's what we're looking at. We obviously are going to take your comments. Feel free to fill out the form. We're going to be integrating those comments and develop a formal proposal. Because of how quickly we need a turnaround on this, again, we are looking to go to the Planning Commission on January 27th for a study session to kind of go over these potential changes with them and talk them through them and get their feedback. From there, we're looking at February 17th for our public hearing, and then tentatively looking at March 23rd to go to Mayor and Council for a public hearing for review and to make a decision. Again, with the passage in November and the quick turnaround, we are looking to do this, relatively quickly. But we encourage you to join us for those public hearings and reach out to us if you have comments on anything related to this stuff. But with that, I kind of just want to open it up to questions and comments from everyone related to some of these things. Yeah, Mo, go ahead.
Again, just, like I said, January 19th is when we have to start applying, and we have until I think March, either 9th or 19th to do it. Obviously, your timeline is a little different. So I just hope that the city of Tucson has a process, because DHS is going to release a form for the municipality to sign. So it'll say we don't have regulations in place yet for, dual licensees. I think will be the box. That will probably be the one you guys have to check. I just want to make sure you guys are ready for.
So Mo, ultimately, what we've had discussions with our zoning administrator and with our staff is that they would interpret it as I think you would have to adhere to the medical marijuana regulations until we have the new ones in place related to that, and that's what I'm assuming is going to happen. Related to that, I mean, it's a really short turnaround time to do any sort of public process related to zoning code changes. So we're trying to do it as quickly as possible to get them in place for you guys, and get them in place so we can, take care of, so we can address those issues that are coming up related to it. But that's I think I believe what we would do.
All I'm saying is that there's a form that they're going to have. As long as you guys sign it, we're good. So otherwise, we'll miss the window to convert to adult use. Everybody in Tucson will. So I just hope. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. Go right ahead.
I mean, with regard to what Mo just said, there's no licenses. There's no other than dual licenses that are available to be located in Pima County, or I'm sorry, in Tucson during this cycle. So you guys taking your time and doing this right, I don't think is a problem. I mean, and as far as I know, there's no form that requires us to get a zoning approval for our current locations. If we're already, there's only 3 things that require it for dual use, and those are the only licenses that are available going forward right now. The other counties, the other 11 licenses that they're at least available are in counties that are not Pima County.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll just add one thing. I was on the DHS meeting, Michael, last week. I don't know if you were at 9 a.m. on Thursday. They said they would have a form with that exact box. That's why I'm bringing it up. I have no interest in having the city something else, but yeah.
Well, yeah, but that form had to do if you're applying for an outlying county application. That was the form. If you look at the 3 requirements in the regulations, proposed regulations, there's no form that says we have to have DHS or we have to have a zoning approval from the city or county that we're in. That's all I'm saying.
I hope you're right.
I was right last time about the cultivation, so I'm probably right.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments or questions or anything of that sort? Yes, David.
Yeah, you're looking at changing zoning, right? For these sites. So
yeah, we're potentially looking at zoning code changes related to this. Yes.
So are you going to address the recommendations I made over 2 years ago to change the zoning for the cultivation sites to keep them away from neighborhoods?
So David, yeah, I recall, I believe those were what, a mile setback from residential districts, and there was something else related to that. Is that correct?
Yeah, to notify neighborhoods that are going to be affected by this, so they can have a chance to let you know whether they want these things near their neighborhoods or not.
Yeah, so we all that information was presented to the Planning Commission last time when we did this. We actually did an analysis, a mapping analysis of that 1 mile setback from residential zones, and it basically restricted, it made for all of our, if not all, most of our existing facilities non-conforming, so then they weren't up to code. So they wouldn't be able to expand or make any changes moving forward. But it also, with that 1 mile setback, it restricted them to basically only a small portion, which I think was actually on Davis-Monthan land. Unfortunately, there are severe issues related to making residential setbacks, and it's just because of our development patterns within the city of Tucson. We're definitely, welcome. To present that to Planning Commission, we can give that information to them, and they can. Ultimately, they're the ones who would be making that recommendation to Mayor and Council, and Mayor and Council would be the ones making the decision on whether or not to adopt those zoning changes. Dimitri, sorry, David.
I guess it wouldn't be an issue if these places could keep their odors to their own property instead of spewing them out to the neighbors like what they're doing right now. Otherwise, you got to get them away from neighborhoods, because it's not acceptable to be smelling this stuff at my home.
Which site are we talking about here?
Rita Ranch.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, David. I understand your concern with this, and it is something that we will be looking at with looking at our odor mitigation regulations. Dimitri, you have your hand up. Oh, sorry, David. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I can't believe that this place in Rita Ranch is going to be allowed to expand to 10 times its current size without the expansion being subject to the new odor mitigation rules. That's just nonsense.
David, I haven't seen any sort of expansion from their plans or anything, but I'm happy to look into that and see why that would be the case if that is the case. So I'll look into that.
They're planning on it, and I was told in person that they hope to be able to do that.
Okay. Well, I will look into that and see what the issue is related to that. Thank you. Sorry. Dimitri, you have your hand up? I think you're still muted. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, gotcha. Yep, we can hear you.
Yeah. Sorry, just real quickly, and since David brought it up as a resident who was contrary to cultivations, I'll mention as a resident who's very pro economic development and jobs. We made a mistake in 2010, creating an ordinance that was very restrictive. And since Mo brought it up, what a unique opportunity to encourage more cultivations to come into the city of Tucson by creating less restrictive cultivation, any restrictions possible that would be less restrictive on cultivations. And the number of jobs that have been created by the cultivations and the manufacturing in Tucson has been very beneficial to lots of people. I don't know how many complaints there are about smells. I don't know what the data on science is on how far a smell travels, but I would urge the staff to please consider that there's lots of residents of the city of Tucson who like the economic development and jobs created by this industry.
Okay, thanks, Dimitri. Michael, you had your hand up?
Yeah, just one. I mean, since we're going to make a referral to the Planning and Zoning Commission, I wondered if, and we talked about this the last couple meetings, I think a little bit, had to do with fixing the current issues with setbacks on medical dispensaries as well. I mean, I don't know if that's something we can make the referral and let the Planning Commission talk it out. All I remember is that last time we went to the Planning Commission, they were at that time of the mindset to get rid of almost all the setback requirements, keep the zoning the same, but not have to have the 1,000-foot setback from this or the 2,000 foot setback from that, and basically just restricting it to what the state had done, which is a 500-foot setback from a school. So I don't know if that's something that we can be referred over, because I know that they, in order to get it to the city council for them to make the changes, that the Planning Commission's got to make the recommendation or at least discuss it at the public hearing. So, but I think those kind of things should be on the table and let them take a look at it as well. And it comes up with the issue about this, the zoning letter and all those kinds of other things, which can be played with or manipulated against people, when different things happen after they get the zoning letter, but before they get their approval from the state. So those are some, and maybe that's something internal that needs worked out in the development services, but I at least think it should get to the Planning and Zoning Commission, give them the opportunity to make those changes as they see fit. So thanks.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. David, do you have your hand up?
Yeah. The odors, maybe some people like the odors, but I don't like the odors, and I don't want to be smelling them at my home. Sorry. I don't care what the economic impact is. I didn't have any voice in this thing coming to my neighborhood, and it's unfair. I'm sorry. Well, I'm not sorry. I just disagree. It shouldn't be here. It shouldn't be spewing out odors into the neighborhood. And in this particular case, if you look at the odor mitigation plan, it diagrams out that there was 148 nearby homes that would be affected by the odor. So it was when the city approved this odor mitigation plan, they should have known that it was going to affect the neighborhoods. nearby. And they should have made it restrictive so that it didn't affect the neighborhoods nearby. And I hope they do something about it going forward, because it's just plain not acceptable.
Thank you, David. Mo, you have your hand up?
I was just going to say that, you had 60% of the voting population of the state vote yes on marijuana. Pima County was, I think, 66% for it. We need to stop treating marijuana smell like it's this disease that's out there. It's this odor mitigation thing. I get it. We comply with it. I believe every facility, including Rita Ranch, is in compliance with it. So to keep harping on this one issue, I don't think is a productive use of time here. That's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Mo. All right. Let's see. I have a couple more comments related to odor mitigation. Alex says there's quite a few offensive odors in the air, cannabis being the least offensive of them. And then Al says the city planning, procuring the right equipment to verify odor mitigation and provide instruction to inspectors. Your comment that odor would not go past the fence is incorrect. I smelled the skunk last Friday on Rita Road. There is no sure system for submitting complaints. So, and I think we talked about this a little bit with the slide. There are some issues just related to enforcement and things of that sort, and I totally get that. We are looking into the potential for figuring out the right equipment to do that. I will say that's I'm not sure about my comment about the odor not going past the fence. I don't recall that, but we are looking into ways to make it more effective as far as ways to mitigate the odor. Alex says, my yard has often overcome the odor of rubber, tires, mineral processing, smoke, pollution. Should we discuss odor mitigation for other cities? Okay. Okay. David, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I'm kind of offended by these arguments that I should just be okay with the odor. And, whoever voted for this, that's their right. But I voted against it, and I didn't have any say about this place coming to my neighborhood. So if you think it's okay, that's your opinion. But I have my opinion too, and for me, it's not okay.
Okay, thank you, David. I appreciate your comments. Okay, with that, anybody else?
Just want to quickly interject. This has been a really good conversation. I think the odor mitigation is a really tough issue, as Dan said, for a lot of reasons. And to the comment about, other odors, that's actually goes back to some of the original reasons that we have zoning, was to separate uses that tend to create odors and other impacts on development on adjacent uses from things like homes. So addressing odor is something that is valid and legitimate, I think. But of course, we're trying to balance that with the needs of the industry and what are reasonable mitigation. So absolutely, we do look at odors in other industries besides just marijuana cultivation. And we are trying to, listen to all parties here and come up with some solutions that are reasonable and that we can actually enforce.
Thanks, Corin. David, do you have your hand up again?
Yeah, whoever just said that I'm wasting your time, would you let us know why you made that comment?
I don't know that we want to go into that, but
Yeah,
we absolutely want to hear your opinion as a resident adjacent to a cultivation facility. So to Tim, you may feel that way, but that's what this forum is for, to hear from all parties.
Okay. I think as long as there's no more comments or questions or anything, I really do. We thank you for joining us, having the conversation, and providing feedback to us. Like I said, we're going to be taking that information, kind of working through and crafting up something to bring to the Planning Commission. Feel free to fill out comments, reach out to us. We're always looking to get feedback from you. And we really do appreciate you spending the time and joining us today. So thank you very much. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for attending.
Thanks all.